what is going on? I went to the men's toilet. I opened the toilet door. I opened the men's bathroom door. This guy was holding a sword. In last week's episode, we continued our journey into the heart of China by finally summiting the majestic Song Mountain. Having finally conquered the peak, it was a climb to remember. In today's episode, we discover what it means to be king by visiting one of the oldest imperial tombs in all of China. Then, we make our way to the very site China's only female emperor cemented her reign, and what this Chinese city has done to bring the past back to life. Good morning, y'all. We are standing here in the middle of Luoyang City. We are standing right about the city center of the old city. So they have an old city and a new city. You can see here, old city. We're standing right in the middle of it. New city is going to be full of skyscrapers, much newer. Now, today, we have something really exciting, something that very few people know about. Despite the fact that we are standing in the middle of a 8 million people strong city, we are standing here at the former site of a Zhou Dynasty tomb burial site for its kings. Now, this place is going to be called, as you can see here, the Museum of Luoyang Eastern Zhou and Royal Horse and Chariot Pits. This is a very little known museum that opened in 2013. We're standing here. You can see here it's a public park. There's quite a few people just being around on a Saturday morning, just having a good time. And we're actually gonna go in now. We bought our tickets. It was very inexpensive, less than $4. We're gonna go in, and today we're gonna see some things from one of the earliest eras of Chinese history, the Western Zhou Dynasty. This is earlier than anything we've seen before. Now remember, when you want to enter into this museum, you're actually going down underground. Look at this entrance. You're taking steps down underground. But before we go in, look at the statue of the 6 horses pulling on a chariot. Let me get a little bit closer here. This is extremely important because 6 horses pulling on a chariot is reserved for only the emperor. Only the emperor could have 6 horses pulling his chariot. His wife, his consort, his empress, 4 horses. So we're excited to go in. Take a look at this again. You see these 4 characters here. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. You see these 4 characters here. 1, 2, 3, 4. None of which are recognizable. I can't read any of them. This one looks... See, I don't even want to venture a guess because I don't know what it is, but these are ancient Chinese writing, the precursors to what you see in Chinese language today. Experts can read it, archaeologists and historians can read it, but not me. So this just shows you how old this site is. Over 2,500 years of history here that we're going to see. This is actually one of the earliest tombs I've ever seen in China. I've seen some Han Dynasty tombs. I've seen some Tang Dynasty tombs. But Zhou Dynasty is the earliest that I've ever seen. So super excited to go in. I'm not really sure what I'm going to see today, but it's going to be some pits and some artifacts that were discovered here, I'm sure. Exactly what? We'll find out in a second. Let's go in. made my way inside and I walked around the whole place. This is not a very large museum. It's divided into two different spaces. One is for exhibiting the artifacts. Some of the artifacts have been found here and that are still exhibited here, as in they haven't been distributed to other national museums in China. So I've been reading what's on the wall here to try to understand exactly what's going on here. So if we look down here, this is the capital city of the Eastern Zhou Dynasty. And I've been trying to understand exactly what's going on here and what this Eastern Zhou Dynasty is all about. So this whole place was called King City, as we saw here. And we have kings that lived here in the Eastern Zhou Dynasty starting in 770 BC. So this is going to be the first one, the Ping Wang, the Ping King, the Ping Emperor. He's been here and he was in place. He was a ruler for 50 years. So 770 to 720. And you're going to go all the way down to 256 BC. So you're talking about over 500 years of history for the Eastern Zhou Empire. Over 500 years. Let that sink in for a second, because why is that so important? You think about over 500 years, it may seem to us today that this time passes by so quickly, right? But 500 years, the United States of America has not been around for more than 250 years. Think about everything that's happened since the founding of the United States. All the presidents, 45 different presidents, 46, right? All the wars, World War I, Civil War, World War II, wars against the British, all these things happened in a span of 250 years. Yet this place has been around for over 500 years in the past. And all these kings, all these emperors. So it may seem like a brief amount of time just by looking at a clipboard here with all their names, but 500 years is such an astounding amount of time for an empire to be existing, to be surviving, that it is just incomprehensible by modern standards. So based on my understanding here, looking at some of the wall literature, that the Eastern Zhou Dynasty is a remnant of the original Zhou Dynasty. So Zhou Dynasty is the second dynasty in China that has archaeological evidence. So if we take out the Xia dynasty, Shang dynasty is immediately after that, and then it's the Zhou. But the Xia dynasty doesn't have any archaeological evidence. So we don't know where. We have hypotheses, we have guesses, but we don't know where the Xia actually lived, where their empire was. But based on historical legends and historical records, this is indeed a real dynasty. So after that, you have the Shang dynasty, and then now this one, the Zhou dynasty, which is actually the longest reigning dynasty in the history of China. But after that fell apart, the descendants of the Zhou dynasty set up what's called the Eastern Zhou Dynasty, and they built their capital here in the city of Luoyang. You see that up there? Reach up there. That's the city of Luoyang. Okay. Now, they, even after the Zhou Empire fell apart, they decided to set up shop here in Luoyang and continue to rule and govern. However, many individual partitions of their former empire declared independence and called themselves their own empire. Okay, so but they still paid respects to the Zhou rulers. So they lived de facto independently, but they gave the Eastern Zhou rulers, all those empires, all those kings that you saw, all those emperors that you saw on the wall, they gave them a titular title, meaning you're still the emperor of the land, but I'm going to live here and do my own thing. So that's going to lead into what's called the Warring States period, and eventually the Spring and Autumn period, where you had many different factions of fighting, conquering land, giving it up, getting it back, all this going back and forth. So all that happened immediately after the Zhou dynasty, and then the Eastern Zhou was a big part during that empire, during that age of warring states. It's literally called warring states because states are just fighting. They're fighting each other They're constantly trying to take over each other's land, getting some, losing some, just a constant struggle before the great first emperor of China, Qin Shi Huang, came and united the entire empire. So based on my understanding, you can see this first hall is not that large. This is where they're going to have the artifacts that were discovered here. Now, and these are some, I believe these are some simulation pits. The real thing is further in the back. Yeah, this is a simulation 1-to-2 ratio. So the real thing is about twice as large as this. That's going to show you what they found at this King City site. So now that we have full understanding, I apologize if I spoke too fast, but think about it like this. You have a great empire. You have a great empire in the Zhou Dynasty, the longest reigning empire, the longest reigning dynasty in the history of China. They lost their land and their dynasty was essentially declared over, but their descendants lived on. They set up shop here in Luoyang and they declared this their capital, and this is the site of where their kings and their emperors lived. And that's going to be what we see today. These are the things that the kings used, the imperial family used, and I think based on some of the currency that I saw, you can see here, this is actually money. So this is bronze coins that the Zhou Dynasty people lived. I know it's not round, right? Look at that. Look at that. What does that even look like? To me, it looks like a dustpan. That's what it looks like. Okay, it's not round. You may think that this is a coin. This is actually not a coin. This is a bronze mirror. Okay, and these are just additional bronze pieces that have been found here. So these are pieces, and if you look at here, this is what the original site looks like. Okay, we're actually standing at one of the largest pits. They built this museum in the middle of downtown Luoyang to show you the exact site of King City, and this is going to be a part of it. If I had to estimate just how large this entire King City was, I'd estimate probably 5 to 10 football fields. 5 to 10 football fields. So you think about how governance is carried out today. You think about a city like Washington, D.C., or you think about the capital, Tokyo, capital of Japan, Tokyo, you think about the capital of China, Beijing. Those are huge cities, right? But you think about the administrative center of a dynasty in years past, thousands of years ago, you realize that the actual area of control that they controlled and ruled and governed out of is not that large by modern standards. I think our modern concepts of a city, of a capital city, far surpass the area of influence that they controlled in the concept of a king city. So keep that in mind. And also, you got to remember, we're having administrative city centers, government centers, capital centers that are making laws for the entire land, right? Like you can't drive drunk, the laws that they have, right? You can't do this, you can't do that. You are allowed to do this, you are allowed to do that. Those are laws that have to be followed throughout the land. But this wasn't the case in the Eastern Zhou period because they had lost so much of their influence because of the waning of their empire. So if you think about their political influence, they may have influenced the king city for sure, and maybe the surrounding 10, 20 miles to a certain extent. But once you get to a different part of the current country where there is a different empire, there is a different, I guess I don't want to use the word dynasty, but a different kingdom that's vying for power and vying for land, I think some of the rules that they have is not going to be as closely followed. So keep that in mind. That's a very important point. And that's why the first emperor of China, Qin Shi Huang, is such an important figure in Chinese history, because of the modern way of governance that we think. For example, a mile is a mile. No matter if you're in Michigan or you're in North Carolina, right? A mile is a mile. A red light is a red light. But imagine the contribution that the first emperor of China made, where he standardized writing, he standardized units of measure. So how much something weighs is going to be the same across all different parts of his country, right? So keep that in mind as you look at some of these things here, because the rituals that they follow is going to be very, very closely followed by other parts of the country at that particular time. However, not everything is going to be identical. Keep that in mind. I guess my biggest point, the biggest takeaway that you should have from all of this is that, yes, even though this is called King City, which is, it sounds very grand, King City. By modern standards, this place is not that large compared to Washington, D.C., where you have the political capital today, compared to Beijing, where the capital is. This is very, very small. This is very, very small. Maybe 10, maybe up to 20 football fields. That's it. And and then you think about that. That's over 500 years of governance that's happening out of these tombs, out of these pits. So what used to be a palace here, right? So very, very important to remember. I just want to give you a quick view of some of the artifacts they have here, and then we're going to walk into the main pit where the burial items are. You can see here on the photo, this was starting to be excavated in the 90s, but they actually started it in the 50s. So you think about the effort. It's a continuing effort. And here on the wall, you can see some of the pieces that are collected throughout the world. Boston Art Museum in Japan and Harvard, Ontario Museum in Canada. So different places all over the world have Zhou Dynasty pieces. Here, look at that. This is a beautiful Zhou Dynasty piece here. Look at the level of detail on this bronze. Just absolutely beautiful. So whenever you go to different museums in China, you're going to see many, many different pieces of bronze. This is what they specialized in. Very, very important to remember that. This is late Bronze period. Early Bronze period, not even a dynasty, right? Early Bronze period, really, really early. I'm talking about Xia Dynasty and earlier, the early Tang people. Those are early Bronze Age people. But by the time we get to the Zhou Dynasty, bronze making has already advanced to the extent that you are now seeing very, very sharp patterns. Look at that. Look at the craftsmanship. Absolutely beautiful. Okay, so I just want to give you a brief look of what's in here. This is not that big of a hall. If I had to estimate, it's probably 3,500 square feet. Not that large. Okay, and a toilet over there. Okay, so once again, we're going to walk into the main highlight, which is going to be the largest pit where they found the chariots, and that's what's in this photo here. Look at that. 6 horses. I'm not sure if you can see it. Maybe it's a little bit too dark, but there are 6 horses pulling on the chariot. That's what we're going to see. Oh, that's a better view of it. 6 horses pulling on the chariot. And why is the number 6 so important? The number 6, only the emperor's chariot can be pulled with 6 horses. Other people, they're lucky to get 4. But only the emperor has 6. This is a tradition that's true even later on in Qing Shi Huang, in the first emperor of China, whose chariot we've never found. We've never found his chariot, but based on historical records, we know his was also pulled by 6 horses. So without further ado, let's go into this large pit that we're going to see today. Again, remember, this museum, not that large. Right here, 4,000 square feet at the most. What we're going to see further ahead of us, that's probably 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 square feet. Okay, that's going to be the highlight of what we're going to see today. Let's go. We've made our way into the discovery site. This is the actual archaeological pit where King City, the chariots were discovered. Look at that. This is going to show you how large this place is. So once again, it's very, very long, but not that wide. So once again, 6,000-7,000 square feet at the most. There's a little bit more here. Okay, but if you look closely down there, these are actual horse skeletons. I know they look like dinosaurs, but these are horses. Clearly, head, torso, legs. Okay, so that they buried real horses along with the chariots, and you see clearly here, that's the outline of a wheel. Okay, now you may say, well, this just looks like a bunch of clay-colored remnants in the ground. Why is this so important? Why is this so important? Well, the reason it's really important is because this is the place that kings, emperors were buried. Emperors were buried here. Okay, now, and why else this is so important? Why is it another reason why this is so important? Because this is the earliest tomb that I've ever seen in China. And I thought, man, I've been to some Han Dynasty tombs, beautiful painted murals, Tang Dynasty tombs, great murals. They're displayed in museums today. But this one right here, you don't see many murals. What you see is just plain old. This is really, really old. This is 2,700 years ago. That's how old it is. By far the oldest tombs that I've ever seen in China that's open to the public. Let me know in the comments if you've seen something else that's older. But if you're seeing something else that's older, you got to go back to the Shang Dynasty. So that would have to be in Henan and Anyang. That would be the site where the Shang emperors are buried. So now that I say that, actually, yeah, that is older. If you go to Anyang, which we will do, and we will make a video about that, those are actually older. So keep that in mind. These are the two oldest places that you can see tombs in China, the Shang Dynasty and the Zhou Dynasty. Now, here what you see. I'm curious, what exactly is going on here? Because it says on that sign, the chariot is being pulled by two horses. And you see two horse skeletons here. Okay, so that would mean that these horses were either buried alive or slaughtered before they were put into this tomb. Because you can see here, they are laying down in exactly the same pattern as they would be pulling the chariots had they been alive. Look at that. And look at the size of this chariot. Look at that. Look at the size of this chariot. It's entirely preserved. You see the axles. You see the structure of this thing, and you see two wheels. What I don't understand is if I'm looking at from up here, it looks like these wheels have become they become stone. Like, look at this. Look at that. That looks like a piece of rock. So I'm not understanding exactly what's going on here. Was this actually made out of wood? Or was this made out of bronze? And also, if you look at that, you can see that piece has broken in half. And if you look at the top, I don't see any remnants of bronze, nothing like that. It just seems like a piece of stone has broken in half and there's a shape. So could it be because it's been so many years, 2,700 years, that the actual organic matter, if it was wood, has already rotted away, and what you only have here are skeletons, aka bones, that's going to stay around forever, and then just a shape of what once was here. I see two employees over there in the corner just having a chat, because I'm the only person here. So I may ask him in a little bit to try to answer this question, because I'm really not understanding this. Look at that. Look at the remnant of this. Look at the remnant of this chariot here. Look at that. How do you even describe that? It looks almost made out of clay. Like it looks made totally out of clay, out of modern day cement, and has been cut in half. But you don't see anything that's sticking out, like a piece of wood fiber. You don't see any pieces of bronze. And look, you could even see there's remnants of bone that's in the middle of this carriage here. And same thing over there. More bone over here. So could this be because it's been so many years, 2,500 years, that whatever matter this carriage was made out of, whatever organic matter this thing was made out of, had already whittled away, and it's just made such a big indentation into this land, this clay, whatever once was here when they were digging, that this is all that's left. Basically a print, basically a mold. Very, very interesting here. So this should give you a good view of how long this place was. If I had to guess from here to there, maybe 35 yards from here to the end. Width-wise, maybe 10 yards. 10 yards. You got a first down here, right? 10 yards, maybe just a first down. Just a very, very long pit. And if you look at these carriages, they're neatly arranged in a row. Look at that. They're very neatly arranged in a row. And I just can't imagine that this was placed here on purpose by archaeologists. This must have been the way that they were buried. Okay, so again, these are tombs. What you're seeing here is tombs. Okay, so clearly this is an Eastern Zhou Dynasty thing where their emperors are buried along with the chariots, maybe even the exact same horses where they used to ride. Wow, look at that. Okay, now this is, I think, what we came for here. I just saw something here. Look at where I'm pointing. You see these? You see this going? What's going on here? I count 6 horses. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 horses. Make sure my math is right. There are 6 heads. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's what this museum is about. The 6 horses pulling on a chariot. This is how we know this is fit for a king. Only a king was buried here. Okay? I mean, you think about at that particular time, most people were just peasants. They were farmers. And this is not a derogatory term. That's just a reality. Most people were agrarian. It was an agrarian-based culture where people just planted crops that were enough for them to eat, maybe a little bit more to sell. But they certainly didn't ride around town. Hello, neighbor. How y'all doing? They didn't ride around town being pulled by 6 horses, right? Okay, now that's very clear. Look at that. 天子驾六. See those 4 Chinese letters up there? 天子驾六. That means the chariot, the cart pulled by 6 horses. And that's what this museum is named after. 天子驾六博物馆. The chariot pulled by 6 horses museum. They're going to give it a long name, some Eastern Zhou Dynasty name, but that's what we came here to see. Look at that. Look at that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then there's one more down there. 6. So this is the emperor's chariot. 6 horses pulling on it. And then he's going to have, I mean, it's like the Secret Service, right? It means you got to have some people protecting him. And those are what's after his procession. 2 more horses, 1 more carriage in the back. And then in front of him, chariot pulled by 4 horses. So based on historical records and what we understand, this is true for the Qing dynasty. This may also be true for the Zhou dynasty. But horses that are 4 horses pulling on a chariot, that's usually reserved for another member of the royal family, but not quite the emperor. So maybe you think, you know, what do you say? Like a empress, one of his concubines, one of his consorts. Maybe they're sitting in here and they're being pulled by 4 horses. And as we keep making our way, you can see here they're putting signs up here. And there's quite a bit of conservation effort here because look at that. Wow. Humidity level, temperature, right? So they're really doing a good job at keeping this place, you know, well maintained, making sure there's not too much moisture in here, making sure the temperature doesn't get too high. And again, if I had to estimate, at least 30, maybe up to 50 horses here, buried here, along with at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, at least a dozen, up to 15 carriages. Up to 15 carriages. Wow. I got a lot of unanswered questions because as I'm walking forward, you see skeletons of horses, you see remnants of chariots. Oh, this is a good view. Let's come here. Check this out here. So, look at that. Clearly a wheel. The wheel axle, right, being pulled by more horses, and these carriages are all being pulled by 2 horses. So generals, bodyguards, part of his procession, okay? And what happens is they all lead to this tomb. This is the Eastern Zhou Dynasty tomb. See, what I don't understand right now is where is the actual body? Did they ever find the body of this Eastern Zhou emperor? Where is the body? Because this is not a very large tomb. by Chinese tomb standards, right? By the time you get to the Han Dynasty, by the time you get to the Tang Dynasty, the actual burial chamber becomes multiple layers where you have to walk through. You're almost descending into a underground home. You got a living room, you got a place to store your grain, you got a place where the coffin is put. Here, I just see one single unit. So perhaps this entire place, flat surface, everything horizon, everything, you notice you don't see any slope here, right? If you go into a museum in Egypt or you go into a Han or Tang Dynasty tomb, there's a slope. It's descending down. Here, everything is flat. So I'm going to have to ask the employees here if they have some information for me about where, if they ever found the body, if this grave was actually robbed. That's another great question. Was this grave ever disturbed and robbed? And where? If they found the coffin of the Zhou Emperor. I'm thinking here. That's why I'm pausing myself here. I'm just thinking. This is very, very interesting. And also, I want to understand exactly what is going on. Like you see, now, there's these more bone fragments here. Look at that. Look at that. More bone fragments here. The horse. I'm not sure what body part that is, but maybe the foot. Look at that. Here's another burial. This is a tomb of Eastern Zhou Dynasty. It just says tomb of Eastern Zhou Dynasty, but it doesn't even say who was buried here, right? But it has to be the emperor, right? You got 6 horses pulling. So now I've given you guys a good look of the pit. There's a lot of literature on the wall that I think I have to read a little bit to try to understand exactly what's going on. You don't see any English here. This is a smaller size museum. So let me start from the top. Let me start at the beginning. I'm going to read it and try to get a good understanding of what exactly is going on here so I can give a better explanation. I'm going to start at the very end. To come back to this area here because after doing some research, reading some of the wall literature, and I whipped out my phone and I started doing some research on my phone right here, I learned some more things. So here, this entire place is actually a sacrificial chamber. This is a sacrificial tomb. This is not, based on my understanding, this is not where the emperor was buried. This is not where the emperor was buried. And frankly, we don't even know if that tomb has been robbed or not, but this is basically a tomb structure that housed his chariots, that housed his chariots. Look at this. Remember earlier I was asking myself, I saw skeletons inside the chariot. What exactly was going on? Well, they also buried dogs here. So this is the skeleton of a dog. So the Eastern Zhou Empire, essentially this is a sacrificial pit. All the horses, as I just found out, were buried alive. All the horses were buried alive. And I also have an explanation on what happened with the actual chariots. They were not made out of bronze. They were likely made out of wood organic matter that decomposed and left these indentations here in the soil. And what the archaeologists did is they had to just clean this up brush by brush. So you see, like you ever seen in the Jurassic Park movies, digging up for dinosaur bones, you're using one of those brushes and you're going stroke by stroke to try to uncover the bones. That's what they had to do here. It was easier because these bones are actual bones, so those survived. But the actual carriage withered away by time. Just simply so many years have passed by. Over 2,000 years have passed by. No remnants of the actual carriage have been found except the shape. Okay, so everything that I read is still a little bit hazy about who was buried there, but I'm almost 100% sure it was not the emperor. That was not what is fit for an emperor, for a king to be buried in. But this entire row here is just where his carriage was buried in. If I had to put it in a different term, it's almost like this was his garage. Like you think about it in real life, you have a garage, you're putting your vehicles in it. This is his garage. And he took it with him in his afterlife. Meaning when he ascended into the afterlife, he needed something to pull him. He didn't want to walk even in the afterlife. So all this had to go with him. All these horses had to be taken with him. Wow. This is unbelievable. Again, very little known museum. I thought it was really, really worth it for us to come and see this. And this just shows you why some of these things survived and why the carriage did not. Because these things, some of these joints, some of these parts, these are all made out of bronze. So they survive. But everything else, like this wheel here, for example, I know it's kind of dark, but this wheel structure, these didn't because they were likely made out of wood. All right, I'm going to go and try to strike up a conversation with the employees over there and see if I can find out who was buried here. Try to get y'all a definitive answer. But I'm pretty sure it's not the emperor. I'm also going to ask them if the emperor's tomb has even been found. It's got to be around here somewhere. I'm standing here I'm back in this main room, but I'm standing here in front of these pieces here because now I finally understand why you saw in the soil only shapes of this carriage here. So if you look here, this is a 4-horse-drawn chariot. And in the back, you have, they just have this guy's hand, right? And then they have the wheel and a structure that he's standing on. What we saw inside are the skeletons of these horses. And you saw the shape of a carriage, but no actual carriage. Like, where's the actual carriage? Where's the wood? Where's whatever? Because that doesn't exist anymore. Over 2,000 years, the wood has corroded. But you see these pieces here, these joints, right? Engineering-wise, you need these joints. You can't just have a big wood structure without some screws, without some bolts, without some nuts, right? That's modern engineering. But even back then, look at these pieces, right? Look at these pieces. They're bronze accessories of the chariot. Like, for example, this could be like a lug. This could be like some type of a connector. Same thing here. This could be used to hold the horses together, right? Maybe for the leash. Now, these pieces, they won't melt away. They're not organic matter, right? This is not made out of wood. These things won't be damaged by time to the extent that they don't exist anymore. Now, they'll change color. Look at that. This color was likely not what they were originally buried in, so they probably were a different color, but you can see shapes still clearly retain the original shape, right? And if you look at the craftsmanship on this piece, clearly you see carving, Eastern Zhou style carving. Okay, so I just wanted to come back here really quickly and give you an idea of why we saw all those outlines in the pit of these wheels, of the stand, but we didn't see the actual thing. That's because they don't exist anymore, but these do. These do. So hopefully that helps. And again, this piece here, this entire place here, I think is more of like a educational room. You know, you come in here, you're met with these objects, right? And they give you an idea of what the Zhou Dynasty, the Eastern Zhou Dynasty was like. What are some coins that they used? What are some of these sacrificial or ceremonial or cooking vessels that the kings used, right? Ceremony they used for special occasions. But the real thing is that pit that we just saw. So I'm actually going to go back there. I'm going to try to ask. They have a tourist center. They have an education center right on the corner. I'm going to try to ask the lady there if she can tell me who exactly was buried there, okay? And how many of all those list of kings that we saw on the wall, how many of those tombs did we actually discover? So let's go back there and see what she has to say. Y'all see that help desk over there? I just had a nice chat with the lady. She probably is an employee or a volunteer here, but I just had a very interesting chat with her, and she was able to explain all the questions I had. So let me tell you what I found out. So these two, and it's very, very interesting, these two rectangular shapes here, there's one here and one over there. These two shapes are indeed tombs. However, they are actually, this is the ceiling. What you're seeing here is the ceiling. The actual tomb is underneath, which the government has not allowed for us to open and go in. And if you look here at this pit, this was the original chariot room. This was the original attendant tomb that whoever this emperor, this king was buried, whenever he was buried, this went along with him. But afterwards, and I'm talking about a couple hundred years after, they dug even further. That's what these two pits are. So these two pits are not buried at the same time as these chariots. They went in a couple hundred years later, and they buried two noblemen, basically rich people, business people that were buried here, nobles, maybe government officials. They're underneath where I'm pointing. Basically, they're underneath my feet right now, okay? And they haven't opened this tomb yet. These two, they haven't opened, neither of them have been opened. However, now, you remember that list on the wall? There were dozens and dozens of these emperors that were on that wall that ruled during the Eastern Zhou Dynasty. Now, I also understand why this museum is called what it's called, 天子驾六. 天子 means emperor, king, sovereign, whatever you want to call it. 驾六 means driving 6 horses that we just saw. However, I realize that I've been using this word emperor wrong the entire time. Prior to Qing Shi Huang, prior to the first emperor of China, this word emperor doesn't even exist. Like in the Chinese language, there is no such thing as emperor at that particular time. So all the Zhou Dynasty, all their kings, let's just use the word king. All their kings were just 天子, kings. So they ruled over their domain. They ruled over the land. They ruled over the Zhou. But it was Qing Shi Huang who officially declared himself Huangdi. Qing Shi Huang. So he called himself an emperor. That's why he was the first emperor of China. And that's why this is a question I've had for myself. I'm like, before the Qing Dynasty came about and they united China, there was the Zhou Dynasty. Why aren't their kings called emperors? Here's the reason why. All the contributions that the Qing Emperor had, all the things that we mentioned, unifying the country, conquering different lands, standardizing measurement, standardizing coinage, money, many, many customs and rituals, language, all these things. But also, he declared himself an emperor, right? It may seem like, he just declared it. Well, he declared it and he backed it up with action by conquering all these different pieces of land. So you have to understand that these two letters here, the first two letters that you see up there, 天子, that's actually the right way to describe a king from the Zhou Dynasty. You can't call them emperors because that's reserved for everyone after the Qing Emperor. Those are real emperors. these are more like, if I had to say this, they're more like a modern governor. They're more like you're the governor of Michigan. Like you govern this state, and then there's next to you, Illinois. There's a governor over there. Now, this governor says, you know what? You're Michigan. We're going to do our own thing here in Illinois. You do your thing in Michigan, but you know what? I'm not going to fight with you about the fact that you, as the governor of Michigan, outrank me. Now, I know this is not how it works in real life, right? State, every governor is the same, but what I mean by that, they have the same title as governor, but I think that's the best way to think about it, because you can't say a Eastern Zhou king ruled over all this land, right? Because if they did, it wouldn't be called the Eastern Zhou. Then the Zhou dynasty would never collapse to begin with. So you look at all this and you say to yourself, well, on that wall, there were like 24 kings. Where are all their tombs? Where are all their tombs? Well, here's the bad news. Here's the bad news. Based on historical records, as in words that we found on tombs, words that we found on pieces that came out of tombs, we opened what we think is the first Eastern Zhou king. That was the Ping Wang. You remember I pointed to that earlier on the wall? If you rewind in this video and you see where my hand was pointing, the very first Eastern Zhou king, he was the Ping Wang. We think we found his tomb. It had been robbed so badly, not even the coffin was found. Only 2 pieces were left. Some kind of jade and some kind of bronze, and they're all sitting in the Loyang Museum today. And why we think that is the Zhou tomb? Well, very, very simple. Why do we think that's an imperial tomb? Because on that bronze piece, it worshipped the king. It said this is something that the king uses. So that's why we think. And also you say, well, there were 25 of them. There were 25 kings. How do you know which one it is? Carbon dating, matching it with historical records, we think that's where the Zhou king was. So keep that in mind. This is not where the king is buried. This particular king, we don't know who it is, because everything that's been unearthed here doesn't have writing that says, okay, this belonged to whichever king. We think it's one of the middle or later kings, and his actual tomb is only about 30 yards from here. But it's not open to the public. You know why? Because it hasn't even been opened. And based on my guess, even if it were opened, there would likely be nothing inside. There will be nothing inside because this has been around for over 2,000 years. There were grave robbers, even in antiquity. So even if we open it up, there probably is nothing left. So that's why this makes this site such an important archaeological discovery, because even if you do open his tomb, there likely is nothing in there. So the fact that you see 6 horses drawing on a carriage, it proves the historical text that so far we've never had any evidence until we open this one, that a king has to be drawn by 6 horses. So keep that in mind. I just had a 15 to 20 minute conversation with a volunteer, and I did find out she is a volunteer who works here, giving knowledge to anyone who asks, anyone who wants to know more about this place. So I just had a 15-20 minute talk with her, and my head is spinning, which is how much knowledge she had. So I'm gonna try to give y'all as much as what I just found out, because it just showed how ignorant I was and how much I didn't know. So let's start from the very beginning. This right here is a replica. This is not a real tomb, very obviously. This is less than 20 feet long, so this is not the real thing. But this is something that they actually found in Loyang City. In Loyang City, they found this tomb. They found this exact tomb. And this exact tomb is shaped like this word here. You see that word there? That's Ya. That is the word for Asia. Yeah. Now there's no connection. There's no connection between the fact that that word means Asia and this tomb is shaped like that word. There's no connection. But they use that word to denote the shape of this tomb. I mean, if you look at that word, right? You see 2 lines in the middle, and then these 2 things sticking out. And you look at this tomb, you look at this shape right here, right? You got what's going on over there up top, you got this thing on the bottom, and then you have these two sticking out on the side. That's why they call it a Ya-shaped tomb. And something really important to remember is that this shaped tomb is only fit for a king. Only a king could have this tomb. Because remember earlier I asked myself, I said, all the tombs I saw slopes. But I didn't see any slopes back there in that large pit. Here you see slopes. Slopes. And more there. So why do slopes exist in this tomb? Very simple reason. Because this is a king's burial tomb, and there are so many things that he's buried with, you need a slope to facilitate the transportation of getting these things into the tomb. That's the key reason. Now, here's something that's very, very sad. You know what? I take that back. It's just the reality of history, okay? Everything you see in here, this is what we think the original tomb looked like. Because when they opened this tomb, these are the only two things that they found. It had been robbed repeatedly over the last 2,000 plus years. That the coffin was missing, the body was missing. They found absolutely nothing. All they found was these two pieces. However, if you look here, let me get a little bit closer to these two pieces, both of which are replicas. I know it doesn't say replica here, but this is also a replica. That one says replica. These two pieces are being held at the Luoyang City Museum. So you can see it in the Luoyang City Museum. And why do they think this shape right here, this shaped tomb right here, is one for the king? Is because in that vessel, well, not only from the shape of it, but in that vessel, okay, in that vessel, they have found the words that denote king. So there are words inside. You can't see it from here, but if we go to the Luoyang Museum and you see the imprint, you see that this is for a king. Now, and they think based on carbon dating, so they're going to carbon date this thing, and then they're going to match it with what's on the wall. Remember that wall earlier? We were looking at all the dates. We were looking, you know what, let me make it over to the wall real quick. You see on this wall, beginning with the first king, this is 770 BC. He ruled from 770 BC to 720 BC. And then these are all dates, right? These are all BC dates. So what's going to happen is that they did the carbon dating, they did the radiocarbon dating, and they think we know this is that of a king's tomb. And then they did carbon dating. They said, you know what? We think this is the first king of the Eastern Zhou Dynasty. None of this. They found none of this. All they found was these two things. Now, you also got to remember, China has a rule. There's a law. There is a tradition here. There is a law here. I take it back. I even take back the word tradition, because it's not a tradition. It's a law now. That you cannot open the tomb of an emperor or a king. I actually asked her. I asked this volunteer, would the Eastern Zhou kings get the same royal treatment as a true king, as a true emperor? Like Qin Shi Huang, that's a true emperor of all of China. Like, that is a true emperor. Wu Zetian, Tang, Taizong, these are real emperors that ruled all of China. These are regional kings, Tianzi, right? They didn't unite China, but they are indeed kings. Do they get the same lawful treatment of not allowing their tombs to be open? And she said yes. So I asked her, I said, how was this open then? How was this open? Well, it turned out they were actually renovating a dorm. They were renovating a dormitory at a school that sits on top of this entire structure, and they accidentally stumbled on this. So it was not an intentional act that they opened this structure, that they opened this king's tomb. It was an accident. That is something key to remember. They didn't go in there with a mission statement saying, we're going to open a king's tomb. No, it was a total accident. And if you understand, there were over 1,000 tombs just in this area alone. So you got to understand, we are standing in the city center of Luoyang, but in reality, this used to be a tomb. This entire area is a tomb. Tombs everywhere. I almost feel like I'm Boromir from Lord of the Rings when they enter into that place, and it strikes Boromir. This is not a blah blah blah. This is a tomb, right? A Kazakh tomb. That's what it was. So that's what it strikes me. It's like we're standing here at a museum. We're standing here in the middle of a city, but in reality, this is a tomb. Everything around us. We're standing on additional tombs below us. We just haven't been able to open it yet. Because some of them, remember I said 30 yards away, there is another king's tomb. Just 30 yards away. We can't open it. Why can't we open it? Because this one, we accidentally stumbled on it. That one, if you open it, you'd be doing it intentionally. If that makes sense. And that is prohibited by law. You cannot intentionally go in and open a tomb of an emperor or a king. Now, we also talked a little bit about this pit right here. This is also a replica, okay? And as you can see here, this is not a Ya-shaped tomb. This is just a big rectangle, right? Look at this. This is just a big rectangle. There's no slopes. You see any sloping? I know you see those rocks here, but that's not a sloping roadway, right? That is a slope. Those are slopes. This is just a rectangle. So who was buried here along with this carriage? A nobleman. Basically someone who was very wealthy, maybe an official, but not a king. Not a king. Maybe even a royal family member, but not a king. And now this is the funny part. I say it's funny because it kind of does look funny looking at it today, and it is just a reality of life. What are these holes in the ground? 1, 2, 3, and then one more down here, 4. What are these holes in the ground? These are actually grave robber, tomb robber, grave digging. I'm talking about Lara Croft going into tombs. These are the holes that they dug over the antiquities to take everything out of the tomb. So obviously when they opened this, they found nothing. They found nothing, not even a bone. They took everything. Literally the body, the coffin, they took everything. So you look at these 4 here. We think that the earliest hole, the earliest grave robbing evidence came from the Tang Dynasty. We think one of these 4 came from the Tang Dynasty. So these aren't even holes that are made from modern day. These are like, these things have been cleaned out over 1,000 years ago. So I don't want you to think like someone with a GPS, with a metal detector, went around and started digging into ancient tombs. No. They were built in antiquity, and they were robbed, most likely, in antiquity as well. So when you think about it, this place offers more educational value than anything else. It offers more educational value than anything else because these are just shapes. When you go in, you're not going to find many of these things. It's going to be mostly empty, okay? So that's a key thing to remember. And that's why when you go into a museum, you try to talk to as many educational people as you can. You learn, you read material. Beautiful, beautiful. Let me show you another look at this hole here. Marvelous. I'm now leaving this museum. I've spent about 2.5 hours here. I'm gonna find a place to sit. I've been walking around nonstop. One of my biggest takeaways here, as I turn around and take a look one more time, at this large statue here. One of my biggest takeaways is that when you look around us, we're in the city center here. This all used to be a tomb, royal tomb burial area. 30 yards away, somewhere 30 yards away here, another Eastern Zhou king is buried here. Biggest takeaway, when you walk into a place like this museum wasn't that large by any standards. Maybe 6, 7, 10,000 square feet. Nothing that large, and yet the history it tells, the stories it has, immeasurable. If I just came here as a tourist and I walked around, I'd probably be out in 20 minutes. Totally, I'd be out in 20 minutes. I look, take some photos, boom, out in 20 minutes, go to lunch. But because we take the time to try to understand everything that happened, everything, why was this place built? Who exactly does it commemorate? What exactly is down there? What did they find when they opened these things? That is why you come here, and this is why you go to different museums. It doesn't matter how big, or in this case, how small it is. Every single museum has a story to tell, and this one had an amazing one. This has been such an enjoyable experience. Wow. We're gonna walk around and see if any markers, or if there are any markers, indicators of where this tomb she was talking about, and then just enjoy our day here in Luoyang. Again, city of 8 million people. It'd be a huge city by our standards, but you can see here, very, very quiet. We're in the city center. What a day, what a place. Guys, remember this. Look at that, I'm gonna take a step down. Look at that. Museum of Luoyang Eastern Zhou Royal Horse and Chariot Pits. If you ever make it to this city, this is a must see. You can't miss it. You can't miss it. This is we're standing in front of a new palace, a new city gate that the city of Luoyang recently built. It's called Yingtian Men. This place mimics what the Yingtian Men, what the original city gate, the Imperial Gate, looked like when the Tang Dynasty Imperial capital was moved from Xi'an, then known as Chang'an, to Luoyang. You can see someone is standing up there. If I zoom in, you can see there's someone standing up there. Right in the middle, this is where the emperor would face the general population when they made their announcements. Important ceremonies, important announcements. We're here today. We went to the museum in the morning and we made our way here in the city of Luoyang. So you're gonna see structures like this throughout China, because there is a great revival to bring back certain important buildings that were long lost to history. Buildings like this that were long destroyed in the annals of history. So what they did here is they rebuilt this entire place based on their best guesstimate of how Yingtian Men looked in real life. This is how they think it looked. Take a look at this. I have some wide-angled lenses on this camera, so it should have a pretty good view. We need to buy a ticket in order to go in, and once it gets completely dark, about after 7 or 8 p.m., this entire place is gonna get lit up. So we should get some good aerial footage then as well, but we're gonna try to make our way in. I ran into some small issues with my COVID test here. The result hasn't come out yet, so I'm trying to get in after my result comes out. So I'm just sitting here waiting. It should be any moment now. But this is a Luoyang city center. We're in the city center of Luoyang, and this is a new location that they built to try to mimic the experience of standing here as a general population, as a citizen, to see what it once was like. So we're gonna go in, we're gonna make our way in and see what they have inside. Let's go. Y'all, I just made my way inside and what I saw was this. I have no idea what is going on here. Have you ever been invited to a party and you're the only one that didn't get the memo that this is a costume party? This is what I feel like. Everyone here, except these people, but everyone here is wearing hanfu. So they're wearing traditional Chinese clothing. Every single person here, except me. I have no idea what is going on. Alright, so there is a gift shop here where you can rent the hanfu. Look at that. Look at that. Oh my goodness, I love it. And this is where they do their costumes. I thought that was a person there for a second. This scared me for a second. So you could rent your costume here. Wow, this is amazing. So I'm just walking around. I'm at the first level. I just came in. I have no idea what's going on right now. What is going on? I went to the men's toilet. I opened the toilet door. I opened the men's bathroom door. This guy was holding a sword in the men's bathroom. Yo, So in all seriousness, I think this is Saturday night, so it's very lively. It's, you know, this is the busiest night of the week, and what they're doing, I think, is a tour. I think they're doing a tour of this place, and the requirement for doing this tour is you have to rent. Evidently not, because that lady I see, she's wearing jeans, wearing t-shirt and jeans, so evidently not. But apparently these people are doing a tour that, yeah, you could do a tour of this place. I'm still confused on what's going on, but let's move on. Let's move on. So to talk a little bit, I'm gonna follow them. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna follow them. I'm gonna try to blend in and follow them, y'all. Let's go. Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. So you can see all along the walls modern paintings illustrating what life was like in the Sui and Tang dynasties. Wow, look at that. This is beautiful. You got some court officials here. Look at that. It's unbelievable. I promise you guys, I opened the bathroom door. There was a guy standing there with a sword. Alright, so we're gonna make our way upstairs, because this now reminds me of what I saw in Xi'an. I see what's going on here. So basically, you can pay and participate in one of these tours, and that'll give you an opportunity to get dressed up and wear costumes from the Sui and Tang dynasty. And they're watching a performance of something. Like there's a performance going on down there. I didn't get the invitation, guys. So I'm going to show you what's going on here. We are at here, the side of the main gate with 3 doorways. So this is the original. I mean, think about where we are right now. Right? If you look at this map, think about where we are. We're at the original site. This is the original site. I don't know what's going on with this light. It's causing this effect, but to keep it simple and brief, we're inside this modern building. This is a modern building that they built to mimic what Yingtian Men, the famous Yingtian Men that Empress Zetian stood on and made announcements to the entire Tang population that was living at the capital. I mean, think about it. In that time period, you barely had buildings that were over 20 feet tall, right? You barely had that. So think about standing, you're witnessing your emperor, and as a woman, the only female emperor in the history of China, she's standing tall at this city gate, addressing the entire crowd. That is such an incredible sight. And this is what the remnants that you see down here is. Because the original Yingtian Men, based on my understanding, had 3 doorways. One here, one in the middle, and one on the far end. So this is very, very similar to what I recall seeing at Daming another Tang Dynasty remnant, Daming in Xi'an, in the city of Xi'an. Okay? Now, you got to understand, these things are all from the same period. This is from the Tang Dynasty. What you see down there, these are just remnants. This is just earth that they've dug up, and they put they built a building over it. So this is very intelligent. What they're doing now is that they're protecting this site. But what they're also doing is they're making it into an entertainment spot. It's Saturday night. Look at how lively this place is. There must have been 100, 150, 200 people dressed in traditional Chinese clothing from that era, and they're gathered here. It's almost like a party. It's a party that I didn't get the costume memo for, but think about how smart that is. They're protecting this ancient historical site with over 1,400 years of history, and yet they also converted this into a modern entertainment facility. Very smart. I'm the only one here because everyone is, I think, still over there watching the performance, and they're going to do their thing, but I'm more interested in the history and the culture part of it all, and that's what I love. That's what I want to show you guys, okay? So very similar structure. Let's talk a little bit about the Sui dynasty first. Very, very short-lived dynasty. Only 37 years. Very short-lived dynasty. 37 years, that is a short dynasty. The other one that I think is comparable would be the Qing dynasty and the Yuan dynasty. Yuan dynasty, barely 100 years. Qing dynasty, also very short. Sui dynasty, 37 years. However, it was an important 37 years. Why is that? Because they built the Grand Canal. The Sui dynasty was responsible for the construction of the Grand Canal that connected so many different parts of the country via a man-made waterway. So that's extremely important. And the Sui dynasty, as short-lived as it was, it actually did have control over large parts of China. If you look at the map of the Sui dynasty, if you spell it, it'd be S-U-I. You Google it, and you look at the amount of territory it controlled. It laid the foundation for the great Tang dynasty that would come one day. So, Tang dynasty came right after the Sui. Think about that. And I just heard a couple of bells ring. Okay, it's either I'm imagining things being all along here, or I just heard a couple of bells, like city bells ring in the distance. So they must be doing a ceremony of some kind, if that's actually happening. Or I'm just imagining things, okay? But we're going to stop here. I'm going to stop the camera here and just keep talking and give you a little bit more history, because it's so fascinating. It's so fascinating. The Sui dynasty as short-lived as it was, and it was short-lived because it tried to take on too many ambitious construction projects that wasted state money, didn't produce the results. They weren't able to feed the people. There were rebellions. They had a hard time. They also tried to conquer what is modern-day Korea, and they failed at doing that. Draining their state coffers even more. You combine that with bad harvests, and that dynasty did not last long at all. However, the Sui paved the way for the great Tang dynasty that would come one day, right after the Sui ended. Okay, so the great Tang dynasty, and that's really the remnants of what we're seeing here, right? The great Tang dynasty. Okay, so what they're doing here, very, very smart, very smart. City wall, 3 gates, emperor stands on the top. And why is this so important? Now remember where we are. We're in the city of Luoyang. You got to remember, Luoyang is not the original capital of the Tang dynasty. The original capital of the Tang dynasty is in Xi'an. That, even by driving, is at least 4.5 hours away. So think about that. At least 4.5 hours away. You're driving, you do 70 an hour on the highway. It's like 300 miles away. That's a long distance. Now that's on a modern highway. So that's a very, very big move for them to go from Xi'an to Luoyang. And when they came here, what did they have to do? Well, I had Damingong. I had this beautiful palace in Xi'an. I'm not gonna live in an Uber. I'm not gonna live in an Airbnb here, right? Like I gotta build another big place here, right? I have to build a big palace here that's worthy of being an emperor, and that's what this place is. So Xi'an has Damingong. Here they have Yingtian Gate, and they have the palace that's attached to here. This one's going to be very much associated with the only female emperor of China, Zetian, because she was the one who was responsible for making this move of the capital from Xi'an to Luoyang. And for the sake of Xi'an, I will get this part in. After that move, you think about how important Xi'an is in terms of being a capital building for China. It was capital. It was the capital of the Chinese Empire, the dynasty, the great Han dynasty, the great Tang dynasty. So many different dynasties had their capital in Xi'an. However, after Zetian moved it, after they moved during the Tang dynasty, Xi'an would never be the capital again. Never in Chinese history again will Xi'an be the capital. So let that sink in. Let that sink in. Their heyday ended during the Tang dynasty. Now, Xi'an today is a very vibrant city. It's got great universities. It's got companies that are based there. Over 10 million people live in Xi'an. Think about that. So the city is doing beautiful. The city is doing beautiful. However, it is important to point out that it has not been the capital of China since the Tang dynasty. Very important to remember that. Okay, so now, I feel like I'm so close, I could reach out and touch it. I feel like I can reach out and touch it. But I think these are the type of places that give you an idea of what Luoyang as a city is all about. Okay? I've spent the better part of the last few days just wandering around Luoyang. I've been riding on a bicycle. I've been riding on an electric moped, just exploring the city. This is not a large city by Chinese standards, nor is it a very lively city by Chinese standards. There isn't really that much of a nightlife, a night scene here, as it is in some southern cities. But this city has something that you can't buy, and that's history. This city has so much history. You can't even write it. You either have it or you don't. You can't make it up. So the historical, the cultural capital, the cultural human capital that this place has is extremely valuable. Now, they say that Luoyang has been the capital of 13 dynasties. 13. Okay? Now, you got to remember, these 13 dynasties, they're not all big dynasties. That's a very key thing to remember. Now, Sui dynasty, the Northern Wei moved over here, right? These are not big dynasties. What are the major important Chinese dynasties? Well, all of them are important to their own extent. But the great ones, the big ones, right? The Qing dynasty, the Ming dynasty, the great Tang dynasty, the Han dynasty, right? In Chinese, they will call it the Han dynasty. By I think in English we call it Han Dynasty. Okay, like the character from Tokyo Drift, Han. The actual right way to address the Han Dynasty is actually Han Dynasty, Hande. Okay, so now you think about all these different dynasties. By the time we get to the Ming and the Qing was exclusively based as a capital in Beijing, current capital of China. The Ming started in Nanjing before moving further north to Beijing. So think about that. Think about that, right? Where is the capital of China today? It's in Beijing, right? There's a reason for that. There's a reason why the capital is in Beijing today. Why is that? Because it's a remnant, a legacy that's been left to us by the two most recent dynasties, the Ming followed by the Qing. That's a key thing to remember. That's the reason why the administrative capital is still in Beijing, right? Geography, history, these all come together, right? Their history is very, very important to understanding the things that are happening today. Today. Oh wow, something is going on. So I'm talking to you, something is going on. Oh wow. I think they're playing a performance of some kind. Oh wow. Oh, I better get to the other side. I think I'm behind the screen now. I think I gotta get to the other side. There's a performance going on. Let me get to the other side, guys. Okay, I made it here. I made it to the other side. It's quite a walk, but I made it. So now they're playing. You can see for yourself. I mean, this is a video that is a computer-generated video where they're trying to tell you some basic information, how tall it was, how deep the foundation was set, how wide it was. Okay, first question that I have in my mind. I like to ask questions. First question, how do they know? How do they know how tall this building was? How do they know how thick and how wide this is? How do you know? I like to ask questions. So my guess would be that number one, this was in historical text. So you could have historical text that said, okay, this building is so awesome, this building is so tall, it was so and so. And they're not gonna say meter, right? They're not gonna say feet. Like, they're not gonna use any of the modern measurements, right? They're not gonna say this building was 30 meters long, 50 meters high. They're not gonna say that because during that time period, they didn't have measurements that we have in modern times. So they would use whatever their language is. For example, they would say, this building was 30 shi tall. Like, I just made a sound, but that's actually a unit of measurement back during the Tang Dynasty. And then what the modern archaeologists would do is they would convert the ancient unit into modern units. Wow, okay. So yes, that's the first question I have, is just how do they know? First, historical text. They will read different historical text that describes this gate. Second, you gotta remember, they found a lot of tomb murals in the Tang Dynasty. So you could have a case where this gate, Yingtian Gate, was portrayed in, let's say, a attendant tomb where a prince was buried, a princess was buried. And why do I say an attendant tomb? Because imperial tombs, remember earlier today, we talked about it, they can't be opened. They can't be opened unless it's totally by accident. You can't open an imperial tomb. So you would go into a prince or a princess or a nobleman's tomb, and maybe on the wall there may be a mural of a palace, and then you can tell, okay, wow, this thing used to be yellow, this thing used to be red. What are the colors? Right, so that's another way. Historical text or any surviving paintings or murals. Okay, before I make my way down from this top platform here, I found this interactive screen here. Right, it's all in Chinese, there's no English here, and I'm certainly not going to read it all, but it's so interesting here because, like, look at the amount of effort that they're putting in here at these modern Chinese tourist facilities. Such a cool design. You can learn more about the building in an interactive way. So here, this is a architectural design that gives you a good idea of what this thing originally looked like. Of course, we can see it from the outside. They try to build it in good faith to what they think it looked like in the past. 3 doors. 1, 2, 3. And then this is the historical story of how this gate came about and what happened here and who are some of the most important people it hosted. The one thing it does mention is a delegation from Japan came here in 733, so almost 1500 years ago, and they put on a big, wow, okay, so a lot of people, there were doctors, there were translators, there were painters, all kinds of big delegation came. And then this is the excavation process. This is where it is. Super cool. All right, we're gonna head downstairs and continue our tour. I apologize for this light. You can see how it's flickering a little bit. That's because these fluorescent, really strong fluorescent light, it tends to create some type of effect with the camera. But let's keep going. So this is the original hall that I came in from, and there's more here. There's more remnants here. I'm gonna walk counterclockwise. But you see there's a big mound in the middle. I wonder what that is. This must be one of the side structures from the original gate. I'm trying to get a better view from the side. And also, here's another cool effect. Look at this wall here. Y'all see that? These are modern. Like when they built this place, they try to mimic wall art from the Tang Dynasty. Look at that. This is a guy. That's a man right here. He's holding onto a camel. It's not a horse. That's a camel right here in the back. And it's so faint, you miss it if you don't pay attention on the wall. I was just walking by and I saw these shadows. And I'm like, what is going on here? Like, am I hallucinating? And indeed, I mean, this guy's riding a horse. Look at that. This guy is riding a horse. And then there's more. The entire wall is dotted with paintings that are barely able to be seen. And they did that on purpose. Such a well-designed place. The ticket to get in here was 30 yuan, $4. I think that's really worth it. All right, let's keep going. One of the first things I noticed as I'm standing from this angle, I'm gonna zoom in a little bit. Y'all see that? That almost looks like layers and layers of what would today be like laying bricks. Y'all see that? Y'all see the individual lines? I'm not 100% sure if this is built afterwards to keep this clay and keep all this earth in place, or did they dig it up like this? Wow. Because if that is actually real, that's wall foundation laid in a brick style from over 1500 years ago. Think about that. That is unbelievable. But I'm skeptical. I'm not sure where, I don't want to say I'm skeptical, but I'm unsure of where this is from. And you see more here as well. This one's a little bit dark, but it's also layered. Like they were laying bricks, small bricks, not large stones either. Look at that. I know it may seem like I'm getting excited over a big pile of just raw earth, but this is where one of the most famous Tang Dynasty sites once stood in all its glory. I think about that. If we can go back in time, this will be the Imperial Gate, where foreign dignitaries traveling so far away to come and visit the Chinese civilization, this is where they will be hosted and welcomed. Unbelievable. All right, let's keep going. We're going to do one last little lap here to get to the exit. We should spend enough time up here looking at the remnants of the foundation that is what once was the city gate. What I'm actually trying to do is get to the main level, that big square up there, to see if I can get a view of the entire building. Otherwise, we're just going to fly our drone. You got to remember that this is a place that generates revenue, right? It's a key thing to remember. So we bought a ticket, $4, 30 yuan to get in here. But I have a gut feeling that if I want to see some other things, like actually ascend up the tower and stand where the emperor stood, that may be an additional ticket. Or based on what I heard, you actually have to go with a tour group before they let you do that. So keep that in mind. If we can't make it up there, we'll get some nice aerial shots, we'll bake it in here. But this should give you a good idea of what this place has been turned into. super smart. The city of Luoyang, good job, great work. They've turned a historical site into a full-blown tourist site and an entertainment facility. Super smart. And also, I want to say one more thing about, you see all those young people that were wearing, not only young people, there were some people that were well over 40 who were wearing hanfu, so the traditional Chinese style clothing. That's super popular in China now. Super popular. Lots of people are doing it. They're wearing these clothing that reflect traditional Chinese culture from a key period of Chinese history where our civilization here in China was at its finest, at its greatest. So they want to bring that back, wear that clothing. It's a Saturday night. It's a night out for them. They're having fun. They're having a good time. So super popular here. Happy to see it. Okay. I just was a little bit surprised because I opened a toilet door and there was a guy standing there with a sword, so it rattled me a little bit. But other than that, if you come here, especially you come here on a Friday or Saturday night, you expect to see that. Expect to see a big costume party where you're the only person that didn't get an invite, or you didn't get an update and you need how to dress a certain way. Okay, look at what I'm wearing. Boom. Sweatpants and Skechers. All right, let's move on. We've made our way completely out of the remnant area where you saw the clayed earth, you saw remnants of the city gate, the city road that led into the 3 gates. So now I'm trying to find my way up to the second level where that big giant square is. And before I do, let me stop here for a second. Wow, look at this painting right here. Look at this painting right here. And look at who I'm about to reveal. Look at her in all her glory. The only female emperor in Chinese history, Zetian. Look at how many people are waiting on her. Look at that. Unbelievable. And this painting should really give you an idea of what this gate looked like, because she's standing on top of Yingtian Gate, of where this place once stood, a giant imperial gate. Look at that. Can you imagine you're a commoner? You're gathered at the square and you're witnessing, like, look at this. There's religious elements here. There's a monk and there's military elements. There are generals on the top, soldiers on the top protecting her. I mean, this is a... Can you imagine you were a commoner and you were here gathered in a square and you're looking at your emperor give this speech over this grand building that is taller than anything else you have in a city. Look at that. It's unbelievable. That's unbelievable. But anyway, I'm trying to find my way to the second floor. I'm trying to find my way to the second floor to go to the public square inside this place, where then I can get a real nice evening view. You see how I just almost tripped? You see how I just almost tripped and fell face first? That's what happens when you're holding a camera and you're trying to narrate at the same time. So now, oh wow, look at that. The lights are fully lit. We're about to go to the second floor. Look at that. Look at that. Wow. See, this alone is worth the ticket. So that's really what we came here for, is to see the night, the light show that comes on at night. They light this whole place up. Saturday night, people are out, they're having fun. You don't even need to buy a ticket to come in here, and you can enjoy the night show from the free public square that's downstairs, but here we're on the second floor. Wow. Look at that. That is so beautiful. Just look at all this. It's my second time in the city of Luoyang. I don't know what I was doing 2 years ago when I came here. You see, I didn't even stay the night. Last time I was in this city, in 2020, I was here. I went to the Lomen Grottos. went to Guanling, the memorial for the general, the famous general Guan Yu. And I went to a famous temple and I went home. Got on the high-speed train and went back to Xi'an. We were staying in Xi'an that time. So I didn't even know this thing existed 2 years ago. But now that I'm actually spending a few days here and exploring the city in full, look at how magnificent this is. Look at this. This is absolutely amazing. So that's where, that right there is where the emperor would stand. That's where Empress, well, I should call her, the Emperor Zetian stood and addressed the entire crowd. Here's what I don't understand. Again, another question from me. Here's something I don't understand. No loudspeakers, no sound systems at that particular time. How does she make herself heard? Like, is she screaming at the top of her lungs to make herself heard to all the people that are down there, that are gathered down there? How does that work? How does that work? How is she able to make herself heard? Because you know, you go to some acoustic buildings like where they're performing concerts and they're doing symphonies, and the way the building is designed, sound bounces off the roof, it travels to every corner, so it doesn't matter if you have a good seat or a cheap seat, you can hear really well. I wonder if the architects, let me know in the comments if you know anything about that, because now I'm really wondering, like just look at how large this is. How does she make herself heard to all the people, tens of thousands of people gathered here? I mean, guys, let's be real. You know I'm a Lord of the Rings fan. This is not Saruman standing on top of the two white. I mean, this is not like he's saying, go to Gondor, go to Helm's Deep. Like this, he's speaking with his staff. Like that's not how it works, right? Like that's mystical. How do the emperors actually make themselves heard to the subjects below? What systems do they use for sound amplification? You could see also, so let's drop that subject. I'm just being nerdy, but you can see ahead, there are these young ladies here that are wearing traditional clothing, very, very popular. So, wow, look at this. And also, you could see further ahead, a nice city view. There's not much to see here because remember, we're in the old town area. Loyang is kind of divided into many different neighborhoods, but this is the old city area, the old town. That's the square down there. You see more and more people are trying to get in. They're paying for their ticket. They're trying to get in. That's where I came in, right down there. Look at that. But this is a public square. You don't need to buy a ticket to be here. This is a public square, and you can enjoy this nice evening show that they're putting on. Look at this. Look at this. And they should be doing a lighting show as well at certain key holidays. Wow, this is so amazing. Like, this alone is worth the ticket. And far in the distance there, I'm gonna zoom in. You see that tower right there? That's like a symbol. That's like a key tower here in Loyang. It's kind of like, you know, that big famous tower in Guangzhou. Like, they have one here in Loyang as well. Wow, beautiful. Highly encourage you guys to come and check it out. Like, China is more than just Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou, right? Like, China's more than that. There's so many beautiful things to see, so many warm people. Like, I've met so many nice people here. Being in the car on these long car rides to get to some of these tourist places I'm going to, it's like 2 hours in the car, 3 hours in the car. You strike up conversations, and the people are so warm, nice, inviting. You gotta come here. China's so big, you can get lost. There's so many things to see. Take you years to see it all. I've spent years traveling throughout China, and I feel like I haven't even seen 5% of it. I'm not even exaggerating. Look at all this. This is so beautiful. This is so beautiful. Anyway, we're gonna keep walking ahead because there's more down there. There's more ahead of us. And you'll see exactly what they're trying to do with this entire facility. Not only do they have a city gate, they actually have the entire Imperial grounds. Look at that. Unbelievable. And that's further ahead of us. I'm gonna give you a little sneak peek right now. You see that ahead of me? We're gonna go check that out as well. Let's go. You see those people standing up there? So they're a part of a special group tour that you dress up in Hanfu traditional Chinese clothing. It's kind of like a group experience they're all part of. I'm gonna zoom in a little bit, see if you can see that. You gotta be wearing costume in order to get up there. Where you're wearing sweatpants like this, they won't let you go up there. Anyway, look at how beautiful all this is. So I'm gonna keep Look at how beautiful all this looks. This is incredible. The city of Luoyang has done a spectacular job. Take my hat off to them. So I'm going to keep moving, keep walking forward to show you what are some other things that they built to try to bring about this great revival. Look at that. So those three letters up there, that says the same thing, Yingtian Gate, but it just so happened to be written in old style, traditional style Chinese writing. So those letters aren't frequently used in the Chinese language today. You wouldn't see that in textbooks. And I just realized I inadvertently walked through the middle gate. That's reserved for the emperor. Subconsciously, I did it. What does that say about me? Anyway, lots of people flying about their drones. I see a drone ahead of me. So this is the northern part of the square. So our gate faces south. That's south. And we're facing north now. And you can see this is not the only tourist facility that they built here in Luoyang. They basically built an entire chain of different facilities, different places, different entertainment facilities where you can go and experience life during the Tang Dynasty. You see ahead of me, that building right there, that's a separate ticket. That building right there, that's a separate ticket. And there's no group tickets where you can get into all three at once. So these are all revenue generating things. Okay, these are all, make no mistake about it, there's culture, there's history here, but they found a smart way, the city has found a smart way to generate revenue from tourism by capitalizing on the rich history, this capital, what was once the 13 dynasties. So this is extremely smart, extremely intelligent. And remember, if you want to come here and you're here in the city of Luoyang, you're staying here, and you don't even want to pay to get in and come up, that's fine. You can see these people down there. None of them paid for a ticket. They're just having a good time on a Saturday night. I see people with their kids are running around, just having a good time. You don't have to pay for a ticket to come up here to enjoy this light show. It's free. I love what they're doing here. This is beautiful. Anyway, as I'm standing up here, give you one more look. It's been a beautiful day. And it's been a very productive day. We began our day at Tianzi Liujia, at that beautiful museum where the Eastern Zhou Emperor, his chariot was buried. We saw those horses, we saw some great things, and we heard some great stories from the volunteer there that I was able to translate and give to you. So hopefully you enjoyed that as well. And then we came here. This was less than maybe 2 miles away. Less than 2 miles away. We rode our mopeds here, electric mopeds. We came here, we saw everything that this city has to offer in terms of the new facilities they built. So kind of think of what we saw in the morning as remnants of old society, old antiquities, and this is just new. Everything here is new. Look at these. I was looking at these floors earlier. I mean, these are marble floors that they put everywhere, right? To mimic the luxury, the surplus, the excess of what once was this great Tang Dynasty city gate. So this concludes our day. We've spent a very, very productive day. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed what I've narrated. Okay, leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. Anything else you want me to watch? Anything else you want me to go and do? Okay, let me know. Let me know if you enjoyed it. I certainly have. I enjoy these videos because I'm sharing what I know and what I learned in the process. For example, I walked into that museum today clueless as a potato. I didn't know anything, right? I had a rough idea of the history. I had a rough idea of what the Eastern Zhou Dynasty was all about. But that's what it was, just a rough idea. And I felt like I left that place with more knowledge, with more historical understanding. So that's why you go to these places. I'm learning just like you, and that's why I'm sharing this with you. I enjoy it. This is what I do. I love it. So if you want to stay on this ride and you want to keep learning and you want to keep seeing the things through my lens and you won't get tired of hearing my voice, hit that subscribe button. Let's continue on this train ride together. Let's go keep seeing. Let's not stop, okay? Let me know if you like it. Let me know. Leave a comment. Leave a comment. I try to read them all. I'm going to sign off here. This is from the city of Luoyang in Henan province. Beautiful. Beautiful, a beautiful evening. I'm going to enjoy this Saturday night here in China, in Luoyang, Henan province. Signing off. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you on the next episode. In next week's episode, we visit the Kung millionaire family home, a Chinese castle-like ancient compound belonging to one of the wealthiest families in central China. Let's see how the 1% lived 300 years ago.